distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends.
Hotel family, my name is Brother Ray Ray. Hey, Brother Ray Ray. After a 2-week rest, welcome to the BK History Club. For the people that came out to support the lecture, please give yourself a great big hand. We want to thank you for coming out and supporting. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of Sister Colette Colvin, who came way before Rosa Parks, Amos Wilson, Minister Khalid, Gil Noble, and the great Professor Bill Mackey, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, Louis Ray Rivera, original member of the Mackey's group, Brother Assad, the late great attorney at war, Alton Maddox, and Professor Mackey and all the historians' family who gave up fame and fortune. Big cars. They could have went the route of the traditional historian being controlled, but they chose not to. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Professor George Simmons, the late great Minoko Rashidi. Our historians paid a big price. They did not go the traditional route. So in honor of Leola Maddox, and I wear this hat in honor of Leola and Alton, UAM for life. And this group was started as a spin-off to the United African Movement. So we want to try to keep it going. That's why I want to say thank you for just coming out and supporting. And Miss Leola Maddox she had a relatively new and old car. Drove all the way from Teaneck, New Jersey. She would bring her lunch, her dinner to the UAM because she believed in bringing people together. She believed in the live lectures. She believed in talking history, in conversation, and meeting people. We have new people here who now you done met 4 new people. We meet members, and it's always good for conversation. So in honor of Leola Maddox and the great work of Alton, and you got some people that's big time now, make a lot of money, organizations, all kind of meetings on a Saturday, but they never mention the one who saved their life, United Action Network. They never mentioned that if it wasn't for Alton H. Maddox, it would not be saved Reverend Sharpton. Baddest man in the courtroom. And if you missed the grade at work, we would come there and you had all the young lawyers just coming out and they would sit in the front row and word would be out that Alton H. Maddox was practicing. And they would come out and all them white lawyers and would listen to the work of Alton. Tell you this way, I checked with that. They would listen to the work of Alton and see how this genius would work in the courtroom. And he got you talking about some charges for Donald Trump. He got Reverend Sharpton off of 67 counts. That's how bad he was. And he never mentioned it. So we're going to bring the camera over in honor of Amos Wilson. We're going to bring the camera over to, I call this the Amos Collection. And this is with African World Info Systems. And the late Amos's partner, Sababu, who's continuing the work of Amos. We have Amos's classic, Blueprint for Black Power. Excellent book. You won't have to worry about spending your money no place else. You won't have to worry about no outsiders coming into your community, forming their own organizations, getting their own money, and they leave out of our community because they control. When a people control the food, the stores, and the economics in your community, you'll always go back into the store, even if they disrespect you, and even if they do the atrocities that they're doing, because they control your communities. They control your salons. They control your fruit markets. They have their own organization where they pay their members and give them credit to supply the store. And they don't have to pay back until the money comes in. Then they pay back the loan. The Korean Grocers Association, the Asian Grocers Association, the Arab Association, the Dominican Association. We had those associations, but that history they want to forget. So if you ever want to get a good read and find out, you get Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power, may he rest in peace. The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat toward a Reclamation of the African Mind. This is Sababu's latest. Of course, our minds have to be reclaimed. We have to be redone. Black on black violence, the psychodynamic of black self-annihilation in service of white domination. And whether we know it or not, family, we are still dominated by white people. Don't you ever think so. They control the money, they control it all. We're still dominated by them. They fund both sides. They keep us fighting against each other. They're doing it now. They're taking Nigerians and telling them, don't deal with African Americans. They take Caribbeans, don't deal with African Americans. Don't deal with this person. They got Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. The islands is far apart, and they got them, they don't trust each other. This is how they play. But when they come to us, we kill each other because in service. African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order. The falsification of African consciousness. Issues of manhood in black and white. And Amos's classic, Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children. So that is what I call the Amos Collection. Where you get the books and you do the readings and you study, because it's all for educational purposes. Everything is for educational purposes, what we do here at African Helping Africans in the BK History Club. So I have a bunch of books. These books are for the listening audience, and these books are for people to read, and I say it every week. Because they're never going to ban books. Anybody talking about this present administration is going to ban books? No. You walk the streets and you see books all over the place. People throwing them away. They're never going to ban books. They'll tell you that to get you mad at folks. Never. It's always going to be books. So I got these books in honor of Dr. Ben, black man of the Nile and his family. And Dr. Ben goes into all the greatness of Africa, the hieroglyphics, the Sphinx, the greatness, how they built the pyramids, the religions, how they came out of Africa. And if you ever go, Dr. Lewis has an excellent slide presentation on how they built these great, and they're still trying to find out. Not a mistake in the pyramids. And they still try to tell you how they ain't built nothing. So in honor of Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, I am advanced surgeon. Professor George Simmons, Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. This book will tell you all the mistakes we made as a people, from the Arab slave trade. This book, Chancellor Williams, armies, 30, 40,000 armies. So if you want to know the mistakes we made, and in the back, it has where he went and got his information from. So Chancellor Williams is going to tell us where we made our mistakes. Richard Pryor, bad dude, best comedian, hard life. Dr. Mackey would say, if you want to read about somebody, you get the book. I don't care who the person is. You get the books and read them. They out there. And Richard Pryor, boy, he had a hell of a life. Reparations. Isn't this something? Reparations, family, isn't this something? Reparations, every time I study. Now, you can say what you want to say about Donald Trump. And he ain't hiding nothing, he telling you to your face. And you got to respect the person that tells you to your face what he going to do. So he comes up with a thing where he said he's going to give the people that stormed the Capitol reparations. He said he's going to give them all this money because he feel they were disrespected and this and that. And basically all of them were Soros's people. They came in from Soros. The man did it in 2 weeks. He initiated a repayment in 2 weeks, a week. He said, I'm going to give them 200 and so amount of money because something happened. And we're going to give them that money. And the whole Congress, everybody making crazy. Ah! Just like that. I'm giving them the money. John Conyers wrote that bill, and that bill sat on the Senate floor for years. The Democrats had control of both houses and didn't pass nothing. Didn't pass a crime bill. They passed bills for everybody else. Didn't pass a bill, nothing to protect black folks. They passed sanctuary cities to help other folks. New people, not the people that was already here struggling in this country, and done gave the lawyer money for 20 years and the lawyer still ain't get them their paper, our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And every time you open up the back of the newspaper, the Carib News, some lawyer is saying we're going to get you citizenship. And they've been here for years, productive members. But we need another study. Brother being hung. The dogs, the whippings, whether it's in Mississippi, Brazil, Jamaica, St. Croix, Barbados, the majority of the slaves, as Brother Truss from African Echo states, the majority of the slaves were dropped in Brazil. Not the Caribbean, in Brazil. The hangings. They never had this book without sanctuary. We got to have another study. And then you got these fools up in Albany talking about we signed an executive order to have another study on reparations. Another study. The Asians didn't get no study. The Jews didn't get no study, but now they have another study. And then you actually got black folks against it. And you did not go for reparations in the country that you came from. How Reginald Lewis created a billion-dollar business empire. Reginald Lewis was a bad dude. He took over Beatrice Foods, Tropicana orange juice, and all the products that they made, and he was murdered. He was killed in a plane accident. But Reginald Lewis wrote a book. Why should all the white guys have all the fun? He was a bad dude in making money, in hostile takeovers. When you hear the word hostile takeovers, that means, you hear it all the time if you read the financial papers. That means if Brother Sharif owns a company and Brother Omar is looking at that company and he look at it and see how the thing is going, they do a hostile takeover. He has the ability to take that his company from him. They do it all the time. So read about Reginald Lewis. If you ever want to see how Europeans live, the young brother was not created to pass stop rain. It was created because they didn't have no sewer systems in the Dark Ages. And they threw the human waste out of the windows. The Moors, they were African. They went into Europe and civilized them. Showed them how to wash up, deodorant. But Terrence McLaughlin, you want to see how they lived? And this is a small book. Get this. I don't care who's running for office in Georgia. None of them could hold, none of them could deal with Cynthia McKinney. Cynthia McKinney is the only person that cared about the people of Georgia. How China sneezes from the coronavirus lockdown to the global political crisis. Cynthia McKinney. She is the only one, and there was another book, but I don't have it. The other book is how the U.S. creates, when Donald Trump said S-hole countries, well, she wrote a book on how the U.S. creates S-hole countries. The re-enslavement of black Africans from the Civil War to World War I, they tell you everything we had to go through. So what are you talking about? You need another study. Queen Nzinga, thank you African Echoes. Queen Nzinga was a fierce warrior sister. And if the sisters would read this book, the brothers wouldn't be able to pull the wool over their eyes. When they went to negotiate with the Portuguese, they wouldn't even let her sit down. They didn't let the Africans sit down and negotiate. The brothers made their own bench and she sat on, they made the bench so she could negotiate. Fierce. Just like Madam Sinclair with the numbers in Harlem. Bumpy Johnson worked for her first. She went head to head with organized crime. And as Trust says, another original gangster, Casper Holstein from the Caribbean. That's why we always have Trust here. Queen Nzinga. And if the sisters would read that book, you wouldn't be able to pull the wool over. When the chumps start talking that nonsense, you better get out of here. You remember when Winnie Mandela found out the traitor? She put a tie over him and burned him out. All traitors gotta go. Black identity and political activism in New York, 1786 to 1861. The draft riots was 1863, I believe, where the Irish didn't want to go to war and they was hanging us from the lampposts on 42nd Street. The Children's Orphanage, where the library is on 42nd and 5th. See, we lived in that area, San Juan Hill. We lived around City Hall. We lived in Seneca Village, Central Park. And they're removing us the same way they're removing us today out of our communities. So this book, in honor, political activism in New York City. Spiro Agnew, go quietly or else. And Spiro Agnew's not black. AIPAC, the special organizations, and this is his book, Go Quietly or Else. So if you think somebody's in control, run around talking about Donald Trump, you better look at the house, the back, who's running the show. But you can get ahead of it by reading Spiro's book. His story, the events leading to his resignation. So when they get you up there and you got all these guys talking all this nonsense on what they're going to do, they take you up to the top floor. They have you coming out of a place, women of the night, and have pictures with you, and they send you to a secret party. I'm not talking about up in Hunts Point where we go. They have them special places where only the big boys go, where regular people can't go. Here go the book. How the U.S. Creates S-Hole Countries, edited by Cynthia McKinney. And when Donald Trump threw the toilet paper in Puerto Rico, they didn't tell you that the ruling class in Puerto Rico had already took the money. And they put on social media, on the news, that he was throwing toilet paper at them, but he had gave them a large amount of money. So he's been around. It's just that some people there don't like him. In honor of Professor Mackey, going home, the return to the Georgia backwoods. And I'm going to try to get the copies, and Professor Mackey talks about Jacksonville. But this book, Going Home, we tell you about the South and our legacy in the South. In honor of Professor Mackey. Jazz in Jail. Louis Ray Rivera, who came down here and took over the mantle for Professor Mackey, and he would come down here and he would speak for hours and hours, and me, Brother Calvin, Asar, Brother Colvin, and he took up the mantle, and he lived right there on Jefferson Avenue, and he would come and speak, and we'd walk him home, and he only lived on Jefferson and Nostrand, big 3-family brownstone. They're trying to get it now. See, you might be able to hold on to your house when you're young, but when you get older, the money that you had back then, where you think is enough, it don't be enough years later. And if you don't, your siblings don't have enough sense to go to city services. They told us to go for city services. Adam Powell, the great Adam Powell, was the only true politician that we had. And he told Mike Quill, you're going to hire these black folks. You're going to give them these bus driver jobs. A. Philip Randolph. He was the head of the House Ways and Means Committee. He controlled, that was more powerful than the president because he controlled the money. Now you can't even get us to take these city jobs. So if something happened to you, your siblings could still have something of substance to hold on. But we can't get to them because the system has them thinking for their own. Rest in peace, Adam. And those bums in Harlem, even Charlie Rangel, he gave Harlem to the Dominicans. He didn't give it to a black politician. He gave it to somebody else. Sister Tyreen Wright, the making of a Pan-African. Everybody talks about Booker T, but she has excellent information. And we got to bring her back here. Let me keep this thing going. Blackmail. The solid union between intelligence, organized crime that gave rise to Jeffrey Epstein is called blackmail. So when you think somebody's running stuff, they're not. And this young lady, Whitney Webb, she's one of them, but it's a bunch of people writing about this stuff that's going on. And everybody was at the freak party. You couldn't get in. We couldn't get in. Sharif, money ain't long enough. Big Mel, money ain't long enough. My money ain't long enough. You know where we go? We go up to Hunts Point, Brooklyn Boulevard. We going back over there on Walnut Avenue. Jesus and the Difference Inherited, another excellent book. thanks to African Echoes. The gangs in New York. The Bloods and the Crips ain't got nothing on the Dead Robins. They ain't got nothing on the Bowery Boys. The forming of the gangs in the 5 Points. They were selling us at South Street Seaport. If you want to look at gangs, hello. You want to look at the history of the gangs, get the gangs in New York. And they did not like the movie that they put out, but you got to get the book. And it goes into the creation of organized crime. Dope Incorporated. The French Connection. The British got the Chinese strung out. They know how to use drugs. They got us strung out. In conjunction with organized crime. Vito Genovese. And it's one of the things in the Godfather movie where they was arguing at the table at Corleone, and he was saying he didn't want to get into the drug game. Keep it out of the community. Keep it out of our community. Give it to the blacks. They had Chinese in Canal Street smoking in opium dens. They some vicious people, and they doing us in now. And King George Soros is the one. So you get this book, Lyndon LaRouche. Donald J. Trump. Black folks listen to anybody the media tell you to hate. And ain't nobody read a book yet. All of them. Father came here with a suitcase and a pair of drawers, looking for a dream. Joined the secret society. Our secret societies don't help regular people. Frederick Trump. Now, when he was a Democrat, everything was all right. So you want to read a book, this is a big read. Gold Rush. The bulk of the cash flow in the gold rush. Pimps, prostitutes in the West. Frederick Trump, Fred Trump, Donald Trump. Always read books. I don't care how dirty the guy is. Once you read the books, you find out some stuff that the media ain't telling you. And you got whatever you want to say about him, he'll tell you in your face. That's why he got up and left that lady. He looked at her just like in the street. You in the street, and the guy said, man, that so-and-so ain't worth 2 cents. Man, let me get out of here. And that's what he told her. Man, get out of here. We do it all the time in the street. He from the street. He said, man, get her out of here. She full of it. And we say it all the time. That ain't nothing. Jews and Negro slavery. In the Old South, 1783, 89 to 1865. Empire of their own, how the Jews invented Hollywood. They invented events that never happened. And there was the black exploitation movies that got them out of the way. And they still doing it. And they disrespect us every day. Harry Coleman, William Fox, Carl Lambert, Louis B. Mayer, Jack and Harry Warner. And now their sons and their offsprings are still controlling liquor, controlling movie houses, the distribution, putting us in dresses, creating events that never happened, owning clubs that they didn't own, crossing waters in Egypt that never happened. As Dr. Clark said, how you gonna come through a whole ocean and that was the most greatest time in record keeping that Africans had, and there's no recorded history of you even being there? The 10 Commandments. And it shows how they came to power. The manufacturing of a president, the CIA insertion of Barack Hussein Obama into the White House. So you hear all this nonsense that they're running around, let me tell you, ain't nothing gonna happen. Because then you gotta tell the truth. And all you gotta do is read. And this is not just the only book. You got a couple of other ones. CIA, baby. What you think is real is not real. Henry Ford, the international Jew, who said, there will be no blacks in Dearborn. We will not allow you to come to Dearborn. In honor of Io Kamati, Jews are the problem, and Jews are the problem too. And he's been in Burkina Faso, he's in Kenya right now talking about the slave with the little kids. So we want to thank Io Kamati. Let me tell you, family, this dude right here, this is the man. If you don't read about him, you don't know nothing. How George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and 60s radicals took control of the Democratic Party. Blockbuster, the man behind the curtain. The secret network of George Soros. I call him King George. Him and his gang. Y'all following the wrong king. Soros on Soros, staying ahead of the curve. The world's greatest investor, George Soros, been on Wall Street for years, amassing great fortunes.
Right, this network is breaking up on the sound.
You know, great fortunes. So if you want to read about somebody, get the books. The Soros Agenda. The main obstacle to a stable and just world order of the United States. Read the books and find out who the real king is. And he has everybody on payroll. Him and his gang, Hoffman, Bloomberg, and all these new politicians that's coming out that you never heard of. We're being pushed out of the Bronx. We're already done in Brooklyn. Every major city, black community is being decimated. Other people from other countries are being brought in that don't care nothing about what was done here. Okay, you gotta listen and just be cool until I finish. Be cool until I finish. They bring in people from other places. They got some big people playing games. And if you don't know what's happening, read Soros, Bloomberg, Elon Musk, all of them. Donald Trump, all of them. The dynasties. In honor of Dr. Scott Whitaker, medicine, the causes, solutions, and disease to malnutrition that are killing the world. Dr. Scott out of Georgia, excellent book. And he gets into the phoniness of the vegan, plant-based phenomenon. Deception, the great CO cover-up, where people are still leaving us. Every time you turn around, that's
draft day.
Every time I turn around, I'm going to another funeral. Blood clots being pulled out of people's legs. 10 years after things are happening, they're removing us. And they're removing others, but they're not telling you every time you turn around. This thing that they pulled down is very vicious. Edward Dow, causes unknown. Epidemic of sudden death syndrome, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. And every time you turn around, you go to another funeral. People waking up in their bed. Youngsters, football players, young people. And he was an analyst for the mammoth BlackRock. Young people in the prime of their life that have been running up and down the field, kicking the soccer ball, playing. And it tells you the heart rhythms. How when they were good. How did it happen? Strong. And we're gonna sit up here and let them get away with it. And let them get away with it while our loved ones. And I'm gonna read this right quick. Edward Dow, and this is the book. Edward Dow, a brilliant Wall Street careerist, joined financial titan BlackRock in 2002, promoted to managing director 2004, promoted to managing director. During his 10 years, he added $12 billion to the growth fund he managed and built a reputation for keen ability to understand markets, pick stocks, analyze statistics, identify trends. In 2021, he found himself withdrawing from Wall Street to study an entirely new kind of trend, the expanding of tragic epidemics on sudden death among healthy, our kids. Dow has now brought international attention to alarming excessive death among healthy working age Americans. He is currently partnering the global investment firm, Finance Technology. And that's when I get back to the billions on Wall Street. How they make millions. Ivan Boesky, JP Morgan Chase, Elon Musk made $1 trillion in 1 day, 2 days with SpaceX. $1 trillion. And it all started from the insurance of blacks during slavery on the European slave trade. Commodities, cotton. And you sit up there and you're gonna let them get away with just taking us out. The ultimate vaccine timeline, backpack history of vaccines. This is a book that goes into all kinds of vaccines, even in the turn of the century. And they books, and it goes into the timeline. How now, in the early days, you got 20 shots. Now it's 71 shots. Your liver ain't even, it's the size of a dime. And they already pumping you. And then you look at your loved ones. And they just so happen. And you can't, when God brought them in their life, in this life, through the chromosome of one hit of 300 eggs, and they come into this life, and then they're going to tell us that they have to give them all these shots, and next thing you know, everything's crazy. And then they tell you, it's not that. It didn't come from that. Capitalism on a ventilator. Neither safe nor effective. CO19. Mark Sloan, he had enough courage to write a book on his mother. If any book you're going to get as a start off, you get this book. And I swear Dr. Lewis talks about the Flexner Report and how they took homeopathic medicine out and put in drugs and pharmaceuticals. Listen, I'm reading this thing, it's just I just be going crazy reading this. Man, you don't know what they putting up in there. Vax and unvax. And this is the King Kong. This is what Pfizer didn't want to let us go. And Moderna, the big mammoth Moderna, they stopped the publication of Moderna. But Pfizer put this out, and they wanted to hold the information for 75 years. And it shows you the blood, the spike protein, the blood, what happens, how it changes the molecular science in your body. Where now, all of a sudden, everybody coming up with all kind of stuff. All kind of problems that they didn't have. And this is what Edward Dow talks about. They didn't have these problems. And the insurance companies were saying, why are we paying out all this money? When before this thing came down, people were struggling. But now we paying out so money. At one time, they said, we ain't paying out no more money. and they're gonna sit up there and don't want you to give cause and still run for office. And they're gonna tell you Happy Father's Day, Happy Mother's Day, what the hell they done did. Dirty, stinking. Blog Talk Radio, Tad, Keisha, Brother Blacksmith, Sister Mama, Sister Brooke, and another brother from the Freemans in the quest to expose the reparations. And all the banditos is behind it. Blog Talk Radio, they come on Thursdays, tomorrow, 8 o'clock. FBAs, the thing against FBAs. Blog Talk Radio, Sister Empress, Brother Lumumba, Brother Moses. That comes on Saturday, and all through the week they have podcasts. So that's the Million Women's March. Blog Talk Radio with Sister Empress. Ayo Kamati, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio, every Monday. Baddest show out. You got brother on 95.1 FM out of Birmingham, Brother Anthony Mohammed. This Monday show is a blockbuster. 8 o'clock, you got Brother Jamal, and you can call in. Then you got Dr. Haru. Then you got Ayo Kamati, who's in Kenya, who was in Burkina Faso telling you about how they taking the kids and the Kenyan government ain't saying nothing. Little black kids. Slave trade. Our blockbuster, Darren Muhammad, State of the City, Baltimore. Sometimes he comes on Wednesdays, sometimes he comes on Thursdays, but the Saturday program, State of the City. Darren Muhammad. On Instagram and on YouTube. Bad dude. Dr. Lean comes on every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. African Echoes Family with Brother Trust Graham. That comes on Friday, 8 o'clock. Excellent. But then they give you a 1-2 Saturday, the Know Thyself Study Group with Brother True, Brother Trust, and all the gang out of Newark. The Simotap Organization with Dr. McIntosh, Minefield Program, WBAI, UNIA, Brother Raymond, and they have a store on Merrick Boulevard. I got the flyer in there where you go and you will not get disrespected. You go out to the UNIA store and they treat you like a king out there. You don't have to worry about somebody doing something to you or accusing you of stealing. But Brother Raymond and Michael Duncan and all of them are trying to recreate our minds. So you got to go out there at least once a month. 13205 Merrick Boulevard, right across from the Home Depot. You don't have to worry about somebody doing something to you because you're spending your money with your own. With all the stuff that's happening now. If they would have passed the bill while they was in there protecting us, but they protected everybody else. That's why they do stuff to us, because they didn't put no bill to protect us nowhere. Vote for me and I'll set you free. The hell out of here. So ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, Dr. Lewis, African Helping Africans, his information that he's telling us on Burkina Faso and the economic situation and what he said about the 19 years ago. And they took it off quick. So I'm glad he's coming back again. Give him a great big hand. Sorry I took so long. World renowned and a good friend. African Helping Africans and the Magnets Group, Dr. Arthur Lewis. Yes. Happy Father's Day and Juneteenth coming up, but there's a lot of history behind that. So give him a great big hand.
No sound, Ray. No sound.
didn't talk. You know, you gotta talk and see what he says.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear
I can
me?
hear you, but it's breaking up.
All right, okay, well,
It's breaking up, it's going in and out, in and out, in and
okay,
out.
all right, try your best with it. Okay, get Doc.
Okay, good evening, African community, globally. Wherever African people have an opportunity to listen to this forum and to listen to others globally, we want to extend our appreciation for you giving us the opportunity to come to speak to you. We as living animals, living organisms, the way nature seems to have structured things is that living organisms, people and non-people, they communicate with each other. That's part of the life cycle that we hear. There are different ways that different living organisms, whether they're plants, humans, birds, they have a way of communicating with each other. So one of the ways that we as human beings communicate with each other is through language. There are other ways to communicate. It's through language. And I just like to extend my appreciation for the audience here and the African audience generally for giving me the opportunity to come before you to say a few words. Now, like most speakers or most individuals, everyone chooses a topic that they want to speak about. And in the process, the speaker chooses that particular subject, which may mean that it's incumbent upon the speaker to try to convey to you what he or she would like you to get from the discussion. Ready? Okay. Just want to double check that everything was okay on this side. And in keeping with the protocol, the speaker usually chooses the subject that they want to discuss. And everyone who comes to speak to you, and as we talk to each other, has particular reasons for why they choose a certain area, and how and why they produce the material the way they want to. And as I explained before, when I make these presentations, it's because I have an interest in it. Like all the other speakers and each other, we each feel that what knowledge base we have, we feel that it's important to share it with you. And that's what we're doing here. There's no information that's better or not better than any other information. And the format that I like to use is a format where obviously we talk to each other. And I like to have some type of a handout so that we could follow it sequentially as we make the presentation. And so that you'll have something to begin to study if you decide that this is something that's important enough to you. So what I try to do is say, what do I think is important to African-based people? And I use the word African-based because the way I define it is those human beings who identify and see themselves as Africans. We're just going to use that general term, Africans. In this case, to mean those people who recognize that they come from a landmass we call Africa. So there are different land masses. And Brother Truss and others, very well, have told you about how ancient humanity is in the DNA, and that we're all connected as human beings. And it seems to be those human beings who have melanin is predominant. And something for you to consider, that because we're on this planet called the Earth, we have a special relationship with the electromagnetic spectrum, light. And just to make that illustration is that you ask someone, where do you get your nutrition from for us to stay alive? It's just a basic concept. So most people will tell you, we eat what we call food, and we take it in, and that's the nutrition. But there are at least 2 other methods that you get your nutrition as we know it. The other, one of the 3 methods that you could pretty much document that you get your nourishment, your energy, or whatever you call to sustain you. It's what you put into your mouth primarily, and you call it food. But the body gets and collects and needs energy to function properly in addition to eating food. That's where the sun comes in. That's the electromagnetic spectrum. And to oversimplify it, the pigment, all living organisms basically have some form of pigment, different color. But we as human beings, the melanin functions to capture the electromagnetic spectrum of the sun, of the moon, and any electromagnetic. So you're sitting here, you have an energy base to keep you alive and functioning, and I'm not qualified to tell you what percentage. But the energy base comes from what you call food, and it comes from the electromagnetic energy of the sun, of the moon, the planets. And it's very important. And the third source of energy that we know of, probably many others, is what is produced internally. Like he said, well, what is he talking about? You have living organisms that live within our body, from what we can find, in the blood and skin and the bones. And to give you an illustration, the bacteria, scientists say, you need vitamin A, B, C, D. They give you a list of vitamins. And that's the overall. And then when you read general books, or even your medical school, they don't go into detail. They now know that the vitamins that you need is just these structures. Bacteria makes vitamins. Different types of fungus. So you have living organisms inside you. The most prominent are bacteria. And these bacteria, if you take a cell, a human cell, a cancer cell, a plant cell, and a bacterial cell, and you look at it, the structure, it's about 98% the same. They all have a cell membrane, they all function almost the same. So there are certain, you have, to oversimplify, you have bacteria that's internal to your digestive system, on the skin and other things. And those bacteria make nutrients. It makes a number of your vitamins, it makes a number of your minerals, and they process it. So these bacteria actually biochemically acts exactly like plants that make things you call plants. They're cousins, because plants, bacteria, cancer cells, they're almost 98% when you look at the structure. So the point is that you're getting energy that you need to survive from at least 3 sources: internally through bacteria, the electromagnetic spectrum, and what you call food. I chose this subject, and I said to myself, you have 2 pages, 2 short pages. So I shortened it up because we want to be able to present it relatively fast and see if we can have more of a discussion rather than reading and then giving you that information to give you so you want you to participate. And I said, what are you going to deal with? What bothers you the most? And one of the things I wanted to deal with here, I want to deal with the United States of America. These two pieces of information I give you start with 1860 to 1920. That's what this is about. 1860 to 1920. What happened in the United States is 1860, the Civil War breaks out. So I'd start you with the Civil War. But I want to try to track three groups of people who now live in the United States. We're going to track the European migration, a massive European migration that started in 1860, be a little before, coming from Europe, coming across the ocean up to 1920. And I'll tell you why we cut off. And we'll read it, but I'm just going to say. They say at least 20 million human beings you call Europeans migrated out of Europe and they came to the United States. 1860, we're dealing with in 1920. Now, what is happening in that time period? There are three sources of people I'm dealing with. People you call Africans, people you call Europeans, and the indigenous people that live here. You and I are going to go back in the history a little bit. Say, who was here that we know of? You had the indigenous, we call them Indians. Europeans call them Indians. Then you have this massive influx of white people coming out of Europe. And then you had the millions and millions of Africans who were in what you call the United States, primarily talking about the eastern part, because of the slave trade, okay? But in the process of talking about it, I just want to remind us that there's side things you're going to have to consider. Who are these people you call Africans that were enslaved by the Europeans from 1490 up into a certain period of time? Talk about the importation of human beings in slavery. So you say, okay, what period of time are you talking? You're talking like 1650, when the English begins to bring Africans into this hemisphere. And they drop us, may started off at Barbados and Jamaica, and they work down in the islands, and then start bringing the enslaved Africans into the 13 colonies. So the track that Africans were brought into what you call the Caribbean, and then into what you call the 13 colonies, you track them from the English. The French and all of them enslaved us, but we're dealing with what the English did here in the United States. So they dropped us off in Barbados. My grandparents come from Barbados. Then they drop you off Jamaica. Then they drop you off on all the other little islands. And then they bring you into the South, into the 13 colonies. Who enslaved you? Those human beings you call Englishmen. And we'll go into later if we have time. Who are these Englishmen? And one of the white commentators on the radio said he had a friend, this guy about 60 or 70 years of age. This white man was trying to explain to his friend why the English brought the Africans. Because the first group of human beings that the English brought to what you call the 13 colonies, the first movement of human beings were other white people. So the English enslaved the Irish. So if we could come to that period of time where the English was beginning in the 1600s to come over to start populating what you call North America to steal, they brought slaves. They call them indentured servants, but they were slaves. Who were they? The Irish. The Irish were the slaves, the primary servant of the English. English enslaved everybody. And then the man on the radio said, his friend asked him, why did they bring black people, African people? He said, because these Englishmen brought their slaves, which these Germanic people who are now English, they ran into a group of people, one group that was on these islands called Irish, they enslaved them. So the first group of human beings that come from England, because French was here before, the Spanish was in the area before, the English, they brought their slaves, the English. And then the white man said he told his friend, then the guy asked him, then, what happened? He said because the Irish couldn't do the job, so they had to go and get some strong black people who knew how to farm and knew how to build. But of course, these are things they leave out of the history. So they had to go and they went into Africa and then they brought us here. So that's why his explanation, which it bears out, that these English people, you call the 13 colonies, they brought Irish first. They brought the people they had enslaved first. They couldn't work. You were brought here. You Africans were brought here to build the country. And when we go through and we get into it, you're going to find out that the rice and all of the agricultural products, we were brought here to grow the agriculture, to grow tobacco. We were brought here for our medicines. So they brought the skilled and the unskilled. They went around Africa with the guns. If we had gunpowder, it wouldn't have been like that. Killing people, slaughtering people, and this nonsense about you serve your cousin, you all in the African community, and some white man comes and then say, sell your daughter. It's absurd. But that's when we talk about information, because we human beings communicate with each other, and depending upon who has the predominance of communication, they put out the lie. As Richard Pryor said, you tell a lie, I tell a lie. Okay, so that's how we got here. Okay? Now, then you ask the question, just a little historical point. That's how we first got here? I tell them, I wasn't here. But if you go and you look up Olmec, the Olmecs, and you look in them things, you will notice that the Olmecs were a group of human beings that were living in what you now call Central America, Mexico, and that area all the way down to the northern third of South America, and all the way into what you now call the United States of America. Who are the Olmecs? We'll get pictures. And you look on there and you see the Olmec. You see the statues. Then all of a sudden you look and say, these pyramids, you got hundreds of massive pyramids bigger than in Egypt. The largest pyramids on earth are in Central and South America, built by your ancestors. That everybody agrees they've been there at least 2,000 or 3,000 years. So you as an African have been in Central South America and the Americas for thousands of years, because the proof is there. I don't care about what I say or some Europeans. The statues are there. They're in the museum. They're you. So your presence in what you call the Americas and what you call North America and Central America, the proof is there. And look at the statues of so-called indigenous. They're all African people. The guy looks like Idi Amin. Big nose, big lips. They even have pictures with the braids there. So everybody deal with the subject matter you want. They could say, it was the first time the Africans were brought in North America in 1660. Do whatever, you say whatever you want to say. But I just want to remind everything. And then I asked the question, I wasn't there to see who are Olmecs, who are what they call it in the Caribbean, what do they call us? I can't think of the word. They call us Chicanos or something. I said, if you have a civilization, and you look on the Olmecs, that go from the western part of the United States all through South America into 1/3 of Central America, thousands of statues look like any one of us. Therefore, 2, 3, or 4,000 years, we have long been navigating. We don't have to argue with anybody. So we've been here. So I always say to people, you mean to tell me you have this massive African civilization equivalent to what was in Egypt? And they on the mainlands of the United States, they on the mainlands of Central America, South America. We never took a damn boat to an island called Jamaica and stuff. We've been here. So we just want to put that part in so that you go investigate and you tell anybody else, go to hell. You've been here. That can be documented longer than anybody else. So the first time we weren't on this continent, so-called continent, with these Europeans that brought us. And if you see pictures of the Moors, of the Spanish, after the Moors, we were in that part of Europe, we took over that part, and the Moors were there about 700 years, and we lost power, and they began to, the remnants of drive us out of Europe, that part which is now Portugal, Spain, Italy, and most of France. That was under African rule for 700-800 years. We lost power. So when the Germanic tribes came down and began to conquer us, they took the remnant of us and they started to take us off the continent. But I want you to understand, when you see white people now, any place, you can't find them historically any place. But you can find the Africans historically. And you should see some of the pictures of what you call Spaniards. Okay. So what I want to do will be, as we get into that, to clear up this thing about when we hit the Americans. There ain't no argument. The proof is already there. Whatever happened in the course of history, the Europeans, people you call Europeans, when we put the map up, you look at a map visually, again, I apologize for not having a map to show you at this particular point. Those group of people who lived in a certain area, you now designate as Europe. Okay, these are the Europeans. Around 1400, 1500, 1600, those group of human beings you call European begin to leave that geographical area in search of whatever they didn't have. They went in. Okay, let me give you the actual migration. Around 1850, you had at least, by their own records, at least 20 million human beings leaving Europe, Central and Western Europe, to come to the United States. At the same time, and now we'll go through exactly which group of people they were, but they were coming out of Europe by the tens of millions. About 20 million came out of Western Europe, England, Germany, and they came into what is now the United States. Immigration set in 1920. There were tens of millions who left Spain, Portugal, and that central part, and they went through the Caribbean and they went into South America. And the same thing that those white Europeans, you call Englishmen, when they began to kill down the indigenous people here, the same group of people, a different part of the Europeans, the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the Italians, and a little bit of the Greeks, they came out, went to the Caribbean, and they went into South America. The Portuguese, you see now, you see Portuguese, the Portuguese are in Brazil and Venezuela. So if you look at the 13 major cities in South America, the lower 3 or 4, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. If we were to travel through those things now, they're white. Those are those Spaniards, white Spaniards, those are those Italians, in that central area that went into South America, which was inhabited with people of color. A lot of them the same Africans you see in your statues. And those Italians and those Spanish and a few others, they came down and genocide the indigenous people just like they did here. So that wave, that massive migration, what happened around 1860, we're going to deal with specifically that massive amount coming from North and West Europe came to the United States. But that southern group, that Italian and that Spanish, they came down and went into Central and South America, and they did to the indigenous people and us the same thing they did to the indigenous people here. That's why those 4 countries, Argentina, Chile, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, they were white. They killed down the population, so they're predominantly white people living there from that part of Europe. So something drove out at least 20 million Europeans from the west and the north, and another 20 million, what were they escaping from Europe in 1860? We're going to deal with it, but I wanted to give you a background on what's there. And because we communicate, those people who are in power tell the story the way they want to tell it. They're never going to tell you that. The Pope, I don't remember his name. The Pope that died, not this last one, there was another one that died. Pope, whatever it is, he was the he was an Argentinian. The Pope from Argentina, he's a 3rd generation Italian. So they did in South America. So the northern part of South America still has a large African, mainly can't think of the big one, and in Venezuela. So something happened in Europe that drove out probably 100 million Europeans. 20, 30 million we're going to deal with that came here because we live here, and another 20, 30 million that you're going to deal with that went to South America, in the Caribbean. They were running from something and we're going to deal with it. Just want to give you a background. Okay. So let's go. Okay, so the European colonialism, the period, is roughly from 1400. That's when they began to pour out to now. And those Europeans came in and killed down the indigenous people in what you call America, took the land. They killed down the indigenous people in what you call Canada. This is only 100 years ago. Those of us who were 100, they were killing people when we were babies. This is not no ancient history. They killed down those in Australia to take the land, killed down those in Australia, New Zealand, mass murder. When I was in Vanuatu, in the South Pacific, there was about 250,000 population and 90 islands, and they told us that before the European came, there were so many. Now, Vanuatu is a country in the South Pacific, 90 islands, but only the size of New Jersey. They said before the Europeans came, the population was so great that they could yell and bring down the birds as they came across. So what you have to understand, the people who are running the United States, I'm talking about the white people who are running it. The white people who are running those countries in Europe. Any place you go where European whites are running it, I'm talking about. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. They all got there from mass murder. Mass murder. To take the land. If you don't understand that, the reason that I think I understand it because I wanted to say, what's in the mentality of the white people who run this country, who run Canada? How could the government of the United States say their universities have documented that in the last 10 years, this government, United States of America, through tariffs and what they freeze your money, 28 million dead. Your government, if you are a citizen of the United States, documented 28 million people dead in the last 10 to 12 years from their sanction. They killed by millions. You know, you got to get out in the world and see what the hell is going on. That's what the government of the United States said, that this country, okay, Trump did it, Biden did it, Obama did it, they all did it. Because you have to understand, as far as I'm understanding, I don't want to project nothing on you. I want to say, why these people kill so many people? Why? Well, damn it. Let's see what they did here. When we go through now, let's track what this country, we're now looking over the country. In 1860, the Civil War just began. And millions are coming out. 1860 to 1920, we want to track it. Same time, millions are coming out into Central America, South America, killing by the millions. You talk about, man. Okay, let's go to these two sheets. Okay? The two sheets that I gave you. It's not too much to follow. Now I fully understand why they don't teach history in this country. How the hell you want to teach history and you mass murdering? Okay, two sheets. We're going to read the sheets and talk about it. And then we're going to leave it open for your discussion and your thing. So you think. I'm not asking you to think like I'm giving you what they say happened. So you know who you hear. Page 1. European immigration into the United States of America, 1860 to 1920. That's the same period we're going to trace what was happening to the indigenous and what was happening to us. And when you see what was happening, I understand why they give us, they poison our food in the cities. I understand why they pushed us into these ghettos. When you begin to understand the mass murder, because we don't fully understand the treatment of African people in the United States as part of the mass murder of human beings committed by every European country that came out of Western Europe. Who did it? Don't tell me about Christian, Muslims, and Jews. Dr. Ben tell you. Document it and you go and see. Judaism is a religion, had nothing to do with race. Christianity is a religion, has nothing to do with race. And Islam is a religion, has nothing to do with race. And they all come out of Africa. He documented, you get his book, Africa, Mother of Western Religion. So like I always say, I don't make a distinction. If somebody mistreats me, in this instance, if it's white, they're just white men mistreating me. You don't tell me about he's a Muslim, he's a Jew. I was brought up as a Christian, hardly ever went. I can become a Muslim any damn time I want. All I gotta do is go into the mosque, put on the thing and say, I want to be part of. That's how everybody becomes part. There, you look at the ethnic breakdown of what you call present day Israel. 10 million people. In the breakdown of Israel, they call it's a Jewish state. Yeah, but if you don't go back to the history, and so we go right now, and according to the breakdown of the population of Israel now, 1/3 of Israel is white Jews. White people who came out of Europe calling themselves Jews. Netanyahu's from Poland. Trump is from Germany. Don't give a damn what he call them, Christian, Muslim, or do. It's how they treat you. So the point is, you can go with all that religion is nonsense. Your behavior is your behavior. So right now, you go to the book, you say, what's the breakdown of the Jewish people in Israel now? 1/3 is the white Jews that come out of Europe. That's Netanyahu and Trump. Trump can call himself what the hell he wants. 1/3 of the present Jewish population was living in Africa before there was Israel. Israel was created by the British, put it there. In other words, they discovered oil in that area. Before they discovered oil, let's just say 1850. They've always had, people have always discovered oil. When you look at white people who've been around the world killing everybody, and you target what you call Britain, around 1917, World War I ends. In that war of World War I between the Europeans and the Asians, that country you now call Turkey, had control over the Middle East, what you call the Middle East. You look on the map, and you see Jordan, you see that whole area that Israel, you call the Middle East. It was oil. So the British, and after World War I, Turkey lost the war, so the British and French went in and took over that part of the world and knocked the Turks out. So how did the British in the United States, cousins, get to be in that so-called Middle East, bothering with everybody? Because they had more guns. Europeans had more guns than everybody else. That's the only difference. Africans always fought. We always fought. We just didn't have the guns. If we had guns and gunpowder, you wouldn't have had what you had. But that's just the way it is. So the English and French took over that area, that so-called Middle East. Anybody ever see Lawrence of Arabia? You need to look at the movie, okay. So the British in the United States, he said, what is he talking about? You still have to have the context that from 1400 to now, white people left Europe, killing by millions, taking over people's country. They took over most of South America, they took over North America, they took over Australia, New Zealand, took over Canada. They were taken at the mass murder. So from 1917, Turkey lost the war. They were fighting the war, Turkey lost. England and France came out as conquerors. So when England and France went in and they cut up what they call the Middle East. So if you get a map and you'll see Jordan and you'll see Egypt and you'll see all of these Middle East countries you read about. You don't know about them because the people who run the country, zero. They're not going to tell the people what the hell is going on. When Trump went to his inauguration, the country's at least 50% non-white. 99% everybody sitting there, so you identify as white. How the hell you have an inauguration when half the country is not white by your definition? So the country is only 50% white by their definition, but 99% of the people at his inauguration is white, what they call white. Then has audacity to say, we built the work. We built America. He never said who we were, but it was implied. We white people built it. Wait now. Who grew the food that fed everybody? 1600, 1700, 1800. In other words, there were human beings here who were enslaved, who were digging ditches, creating farms, building roads, building the decks. You built the damn country. But he's saying, we did it. He's a third generation German.
Yep.
So the reason that I bring this to you, because I want to try to say to you, if you don't understand the white people running this country, you don't understand a damn thing, because they are the continuation of that mass murder that started a year ago. They're still doing it. Ain't 28 million that they say the United States document killed 28 million people globally? So, Trump was at the inauguration. We did it. We built the Panama Canal. It was built by people who live in the Caribbean, almost everybody person of color. You built it. But we did it. So why do you expect them to tell the history of the, they're not going to do it. Whoever has the information, the brother says right here, they tell it the way they want. That's why you don't read books anymore and they hide and lie. How are you going to say? Okay, so that's the gist of what we're dealing with white European from 1400 to now, mass murder around the globe. If you don't get that in your mind, you're going to miss it. Oh, they're going to give us reparations. Okay, let's see their behavior. Because I had to dig, I said, what's going on? Then I realized that Donald Trump and the people running this country, they're only 3 generations away from what they were running from out of Europe. And we're going to go through why the hell they were pouring out. That's the context. Now, after World War I, Turkey lost, English stood. They have oil here. They discovered all this oil. They had plenty of oil in Venezuela. They had plenty of oil in Mexico. United States, all that was stealing all that oil. And so the British, when they got into that area, they see all this oil. How are we going to control it? You ever see these Bedouin tribes, groups of the people in the middle, so-called Middle East, the desert? They're nomads. They move around. They don't build pyramids. They don't build structure. They're desert people. So they're desert people, and now all this oil is here. So the British, they had the big guns then, told these people who lived there, you call them Arabs. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'm gonna give you this piece, and I'm gonna back you. You and your family and your cousins, your country. Then I'll give you another piece. You and your family. You understand? Every one of you, with your family and cousins and stuff, that make up a group. They took big groups and made them countries. Saudi Arabia and all of those Arab countries. The origin is in 1917, when the British came in and said, we need this oil we need for our ships and for industry. So they took these Bedouin tribes and made them the sheik of this and the sheik of this and the sheik of that, sheik of that. You go through every one of those Middle East, so-called Middle East countries. They're family countries, made of less than 1 million people. Many of them don't even have their own people there. So these are not, most of these so-called Arab countries, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, all this stuff, when you look it up, they're not countries. You think a country is Burkina Faso, 30, 40 million people, a large land man? No. So what the English did, made these and gave y'all big pieces of land with the oil. Now you're a Bedouin. You with camel and stuff. You don't have any technology. You have nothing. They made them countries, said, we will protect you, Saudi Arabia. We will protect you, so and so. We will protect you, okay? I will give you protection. I'll create that family. And me, white men, I'm going to pump all the oil out. You don't need the oil. You run around with camels and horses. So they set you up. And to protect that oil, I want the oil to come to me. United States and France were the big guys. There was nobody to threaten that whole area. So everyone you pick up, Bedouin here, Saudi Arabia, they're all these families. I'll protect you. I'll protect you and your family. But you have to let me come in and drill the oil out and take the damn oil to Britain, take it to Europe, take the United States. So all that vast amount of oil that was just there. The British beat the Turks, they took control, and they made every one of these families say, I'm gonna protect you. So I fix you up pretty good, and I come with the drilling, and I drill all the oil. All that oil coming, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you count up the thing. So the English went in, the French went in, the United States went and pumped all the oil, took it up to their country. Most of the oil in the United States, Smedley Butler told you, came from the theft from Mexico, came from the death of Venezuela. That's where they were stealing it from all this time. So that's the Middle East. So the white man said, look, this is what we're going to do. I'll set you up, I'll protect you. I'm going to drill for the oil and take it away. Well, the French could do it because there was no strong person around to threaten them. Russia, China, nobody could threaten them. So I will come. Ray and I are two white. He's the English and I'm the French. We set y'all up. Nice little city. Protect you. There's nothing. We drill all the oil, take it back. Make ourselves rich. You must sell the oil in US dollars. So that kept, anybody who wanted to buy the oil had to use the US dollar. That kept the US dollar strong. And then all of that oil, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of oil, you have to take it and reinvest it in England and in the United States. So you the English and the French and you roll up on this vast amount of oil, all you need is the gun. Y'all don't understand it? Gun. Y'all were glad to get something. So United States, England, followed by the United States from 1917, been stealing these people oil, still trying to steal it from Venezuela, from Iran. That's what's been going on. So they set it up. The countries who had to buy oil would buy it in dollars that kept the US dollar. Then, with all of that money, you can't spend nothing on it. It give you your women, your whorehouses, the whole thing you want. But you make that money and you reinvest it in the United States. So what has been keeping the United States economy solvent was one, when the Arabs sell the oil, present day, they sell it in dollar. Everybody got to buy the dollar US then. Then when the oil is pumped out by England and France and US, we take all the oil, it's $300 billion of worth of oil. All that go into British and US economy. Does it go for you or me? No, it goes to the white business, the white person, the big guy. All that goes in the World Bank and all that goes in what you call a stock market and stuff. You don't see a damn dime of it. With the amount of theft this country has been doing, some of these people are fabulously, like you say, this other guy, he's a trillionaire. How the hell you become a trillionaire? You're doing nothing. So that's the petrodollar. That's what the United States has been doing with Britain, that we set you up, we protect you, you sell the oil in dollars, then you ship all that profit back here and you keep the country going. That's the setup that they did in the Middle East. Because that oil was so important, this is 1917. The English and the French and the US said, we gotta have a military base here to protect it. You understand? That military base was Israel. The English said, let's give the Jews a home. We're going to take this little slice of that part of the world and move 1 million white people in, exterminate the population down. And Israel is a military base for the United States, Britain and the United States, to get in there for that oil. But the ethnic breakdown, the Jews needed land. The ethnic breakdown in Israel now is only, of that population, only a third of the white Jews come from Germany and Britain, Germany and Poland. Netanyahu come from Poland. This guy, who's the president here? Trump, masquerading as whatever he wants. He come from Germany. That's 1/3. The other third of 1/3 of Africans, people who call themselves Jews, they were there for hundreds if not thousands of years. And another third of people you call, that third that is from Asian Jews called Ashkenazi, called Khazars Jews, and people like Dr. Ben, black Jews. But just like we're talking, nobody's going to educate you, because if you knew this, dude, why do you think during slavery you weren't allowed to have weapons? Because they know what you were going to do with them, okay? So you get an idea of what we're dealing with. But now we're going to go there. This is all background. So now we're going back. It's like my grandson, when he was about 7 or 8, he asked me, was Malcolm X a slave? I said, and when did he live? He asked me, about 8 or 9. It's important to know the location you're talking about and the time. He didn't know about Malcolm X, whether he was a physical slave. So the same thing we're doing is trying to work with context. Whenever you talk, you gotta try to explain to people what time period you're talking about and the location. He had it right, he's in slavery. Okay. So you now are governed by people who are third generation. Third generation from what? Wait till we find out what their third generation, then you ask them how else are they going to act. So 3 things are happening. There's a mass migration of the white people who run this country. They're having a mass migration of Europeans to populate this country with white people.
Coming in.
While they're flooding in these so-called white people, they're doing, what are they doing to the indigenous people? Who knows? Tell me. What are they doing?
Indigenous meaning American.
Say that again? I'm hard of hearing.
Indigenous meaning American Indian?
Yes.
And or other.
The exploited.
We're only talking about the people who, whatever they look like or whatever they were, whatever they call them, the people who were here before these damn Europeans came.
Yes, sir.
Well, what was happening to them when they brought them in, were bringing them in? What was happening to the indigenous population?
Were they being exploited and killed?
Being what?
Exploited and killed, used and abused.
What's exploited mean?
Used people.
You don't want to tell it what they did?
Well, I'm sure it's pretty ugly.
Use the word, they exterminated them. Cleared them all out of the South. Georgia and South Carolina. They took them off the land. You ever heard that movement of tears and blah, blah, blah? They all stayed, starved them to death.
Trail of tears.
Tells you. What were they doing to indigenous people while they were letting Europeans in?
Smallpox and blankets.
Yeah.
So in other words, while the white people who run this country, the English and the Irish, not the Irish, the English, their model, their mode was, damn, we got here. We'll start killing down the indigenous people on the West Coast. So it's genocides. 1860, what are we talking about? gotta look at this thing. 60? They're pouring in. Civil wars there. African people are now, they're gonna call on African people to save the North. The North was losing. And they didn't want to arm us, but they had to arm 200,000, so they say, of us, to fight on the North to beat the South, correct? So while they were flooding these people in 1860, the Civil War is breaking out, they're bringing in white people. At the same time, they're pushing indigenous people off the land in North Carolina, in Georgia. They're taking them off the land. Those white people coming in, they're putting them on the indigenous land. Those white people that coming in, they're putting them in the urban cities for the industrial cheap labor. That's the, what you call it, the tears.
Trail of tears.
Trail of tears. That's the clearing out of the indigenous people in what we call the South. The Southern, like North Carolina, South Carolina. They were being exterminated. By who? Trump's father. Because when Trump's grandfather came, he's 16 years of age. New York City, came in 18, whatever it is. The indigenous people in the South are being exterminated, and the Europeans are coming in. They're coming in. Who was growing the tobacco? They got the Africans to grow it, but they don't, these white people who run in the country, they don't want a country of African people. They want to run a country, feudalism, slavery, but they don't, why are you bringing in white people to populate the country? Why are you exterminating the people who are there? And the people who are doing all the work to build the damn country, you beating and raping them. That's who you have to understand, whose grandfather is running the United States. They don't give any more damn about you than they did about the indigenous person, who they raped, who they beat. Oh, don't give reparations. Okay. Now, you have the Civil War. The North is losing. So they armed 200,000 Africans. You think they wanted to do that? So while you...
And promise freedom.
Promise.
Yeah, they promised reparations.
While the Civil War is raging, 2 years in, they got to arm 200,000 African people. Because they were losing, the North was losing. And of course, like you say, when the Irish and the rest of them come, they try to put them in. They say, hell no.
I ain't going in there.
Why should you expect an Irish or anyone to treat you? We're going to see how they were living. If you see how they're living, you understand the full behavior of what they did and today. Because that behavior has not changed.
Draft riots.
Okay, so we already now, it's coming in. The Europeans are flooding in 1860. Civil War goes on until what, 6 years, 1865 or 66? Now you under arms and you are killing. And they just flooding in. Where did they put these white workers? Now, most of, okay, when they tell you that white people built this country, all you have to do is look and say, what did they build? And you'll see what was built before they got here. And then if they were so skilled, why did you have to set up extensive school system? Martin Luther King alluded to it. You took your peasants. That's what they were. Uneducated, unskilled European peasants. And you educated them. But they don't play that speech. That's who you... Okay. So you understand what's happening. We're looking down. White people are beginning to pour in. The white people who run this country, they don't want people of color as citizens. They don't want them to have land. They're giving the land to the white people coming in. So white people are being brought in.
Homestead Act, right?
Pardon me?
What was that, the Homestead Act?
Well, whatever the act is called. We'll get to it. Yeah, that's the main act. we'll get into what he is saying about the Homestead Act. So, the land was rich. So while these Europeans are flooding in, indigenous people are being removed and exterminated. So we now know, we snapshot, Europeans are flooding in, totally unskilled. Indigenous people is losing their land and their life. And we're working harder and harder, more difficult, being raped and misabused, and the whole thing we'll get into later in another lecture with the black codes. You know, it was mainly just to keep you totally controlled. So now you have a gist of what was happening in 1860. Okay, so let's go to page 1, page 2, and then we go from there. The gist of what I'm trying to say is the behavior that we're looking at exhibited by these white people. The behavior is exactly the same here. I don't give a damn whether you got housing, run down. What happened to the soldiers when they came back from World War I and World War II? The whites were given money and everything to go to the suburbs.
No.
Africans were kept inside the cities, in the concentration camps. So you have the examples, but they want to make like it's. Okay, so now the indigenous people are being pushed. The civil war's going on. And then he said to mention, what do they call this, when they say when Abraham Lincoln signed to free the slaves?
Juneteenth?
The Declaration, what is it?
Declaration of Independence.
No, it's Emancipation Proclamation. What was it? He signed the paper. Oh, just to touch what Ray Ray was saying. It wasn't called the Homestead Act at that point. But the Homestead Act, when we look at it quickly, then we do it later, is the mechanism. All the white people who are losing their farms now, because of the economy, and because of these wars, and they can't afford fertilizer.
And they're growing the fruit someplace else.
Why are they going to grow it here and they grow it in Brazil? Why are they going to... Africa is now, just what he said, Africa is now getting itself together, and you ain't getting that food there because Africa has 65% of the arable land. Just what he said. Oh, we're losing the farm.
Tangerines come from Africa. Look at them bad.
Right. We're losing the farm. They go on.
Tangerine, look on the bag of all the foods that we buy, and very few of them come from the United States. They come from outside.
Because they were stealing. What's in Central America and stuff? They just stealing everything. So, I lost my train of thought.
Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah. When you look it up, I just looked it up to refresh it. Said he signed it in whatever 1862. And then what does it say? All people held in involuntary servitude or slavery shall be free. But free in those states that are in a state of rebellion. You look up the paper and you find out at that time in the United States there were 35 states. And then the North and the South was fighting, right? Of those 13 colonies, you look up and you list everyone that had broken away and formed their own country. During the Civil War, there were 2 countries.
Texas.
There were 2 different, the Confederacy. Confederacy was a distinct country. At the Civil War, there were 2 countries. Not 1, 2. Those southern states, which broke away, formed the Confederacy, right? Then you had the other group. So you had 35 states in the United States at that point, but you just take those 14 that was fighting with each other. The southern states that broke away, Georgia, North Carolina, those southern states in Texas was added. They were the Confederacy, they had their own president. So there's no way for Abraham Lincoln to write on a piece of paper to free those people who held in slavery, but you're only free if you held in slavery if you are in one of the states of rebellion. You understand? Right. So the other states that wasn't in rebellion, you were a slave in New York, you're still a slave. You see it? You understand what's happening? Yes. The man is jiving. He's going to free Africans from enslavement under a country at that point he no longer ruled. And then you know what happened when Africans had escaped from the plantation, both in the north and the south? The federal government detained them, put them in a big pen, and held them when the fight was over. They didn't get free. So if you broke away in North Carolina, you're now free. Oh, you're free. Make your way up to Maryland or DC, then they put you in a holding pen for your master.
When they catch you.
Right, exactly what you were expressing, Doc, is the cornerstone of Juneteenth, which was 1865, when the Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas.
In other words,
and announced that the Civil War was over.
How did they get free? How did they get free? When those black soldiers and whites came into Texas, killing people.
Right.
That's when you're free physically. So Abraham Lincoln is jiving here.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So while the Europeans are flooding in, the indigenous people in the South are being exterminated because they didn't get to the Mississippi part yet. So the white people running the country of the United States, who is the grandfather of the white people who are running the country now? Trump is third generation. He and I almost the same age. And his grandfather comes off the draft dodger from Germany. My grandfather comes from Barbados. Well, this ain't no ancient history. This is just now. These people running the country don't give a damn about you. They don't care about the vast majority of white people. Because if you compare the period in which the United States was a dominant economic power, between 1944 and about 1990. Don't even go that way. Trump, when he came into his second term, gave to the richest family and the biggest corporations $4 trillion tax break. They all did it. He did it before. Obama did it. So you're living in a country of 350 million. And all of the hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth coming in from the Middle East into the United States is going into the stock market and to the big corporation. You don't see a damn dime of that. All you see is the tax bill. White as well as black. And then when we go back to see what Trump's grandfather came through. Who's the other guy? The Bill Gates. Bill Gates? He's a great-grandfather. They just got here. With nothing. They all came with suitcases. Nothing. That's why they had to have schools and everything to educate them. Let's go through these 2 pages and then we have question and answer. Page 1. Europe's immigration into the United States 1860 to 1920. I just wanted you to get the feel that while these Europeans are pulling in, they're exterminating indigenous, and they're destroying our communities. Wilmington, Black Wall Street, they are destroying your communities. They're breaking it up in our life period. I'm 82 years old. I remember in New York City, City College was built to educate the Europeans. They have no universities. All of these specialty schools, when I grew up in New York City, for engineering, for architecture. That was for white people.
Not for us.
Martin Luther King said it, but we don't want to listen to it. He said, you educate your peasants. He's talking about peasants. They had no schools. So let's read it. We read through this. European immigration into the U.S. 1860 to 1920. So now, why did they come? 20 million people immigrated from Europe into the United States 1860, 1920. Another 20 million or 30 million was pouring out of Portugal, Spain, the rest of them. They went into Central and South America to wreak havoc on indigenous people there, while their cousins came here and wreaked havoc. North, west, southeast. Most of the initial Europeans came from the northwest, southeast. That's basically your Germanic people. And it starts from 1917, South Europe banned. So they started letting in 1860, mainly white people from Northern Europe. And they let it in, and then when 1917 come, oh, we don't want the Italians. We don't want the dark-skinned ones. So they banned them. Sicilian, okay? So they planned the immigration. They wanted white, Anglo-Saxon males. They let in more, and then when the Italians and the Southerners start coming, they blocked them. So now you know what happened to the Italians. Meanwhile, your African community in the United States is being destroyed, systematically destroyed. When slavery, when the war ended, and the Constitution, the 16th Amendment or 15th Amendment said, slavery and involuntary servitude shall be suspended in the United States, except if you get into trouble. If somebody say you were in trouble or they put a charge on you, you go right back to slavery. So approximately in 1860, when the whites were pouring in to make it a white nation, the indigenous people in the South were being exterminated, and the African people were being suppressed in the slave codes. You can't kill you all down. They started killing you, but who's going to grow the food? Who's going to run the country? Okay? Northwest, southeast, up to 1917. The southern part of Europe, the banned. We don't want the Italians and the rest of them. Chinese Exclusion Act, 1882. They say long ago, don't let them Chinese in. Now the English, the U.S. and the French were doing China in the First and Second Opium War. Murder, rape, theft, put in their business.
Drugging them, gave them drugs.
Drugging them, they really did. You think you had it bad in the United States. Oh man, they really did a job on the Chinese.
Chinese opium drug wars.
Okay? And now, of course, you know who brought the heroin in, the big families. Whoever brought it in, those people's grandfather run the country. You got to understand who's running the country. The ones who brought in the drug, who runs the ancestor to the one who did all the extermination and mass murder and stuff. Who the hell do you think you're living with? Nice elected official. Chinese Exclusion Act, systematic, I'm reading right from here, systematic destruction of the African American communities. All your Wall Street, they undid everything. Half of us got caught enslaved, what they call sharecropping, so we were kept under slavery. A quarter of us got land along the East Coast, the Gullah and all of that's gone. And a quarter of us went out west.
California.
But not that far yet, Occupy Wall Street, all that, that was in the Midwest. They destroyed all of it. So they were destroying your community. Why do you think they segregated the schools? To keep a people down, you cannot let them run their own institutions. You must always break them up and keep them. This is part of maintaining. The United States has 365 million people. At least a third or half of the population don't look like Trump. They gotta control you. Some kind of mass incarceration. They put the drugs in, and you know about all of the redlining. It's up to this day. And then the vaccination is the extermination part of you. Gotta get rid of them some kind of way. Okay? Systemic destruction of the African American community and extermination of the indigenous American population. That's what they did. That's what they do. They just said, the government just said that the United States was responsible for 28 million deaths in the last 10, 12 years, just on sanctions. That record is in the UN, everybody knows. Who you think you live with? You think, well, European, second paragraph, European exited ports. They left Liverpool, England, Southampton, England, Bremerhaven, Germany, Naples, Italy, Rotterdam, the Netherlands, Antwerp, Belgium, Hamburg, Sweden. I put these in to show you they're coming out all over. They were pouring out. Ports of entry, where they get into. Ellis Island, New York, Baltimore, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Orleans, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Travel, ship, wooden ships. They started out with wooden ships. Then they had metal ships. They didn't take, now I wasn't there. I'm only recording what's in the literature and the history of so of it is, okay. They said they didn't know winter trips. If you went by wooden boat with a sail, it took you 30 or 40 days. And if you went later on, when they was able to make ships, they said with steel, took you 7 days. 7 to 10 days. Okay? Now, the next paragraph tell you the condition they were in. They were in the steerage. The definition that the book says is steerage means way down. You like at the bottom. You in the basement.
The ship.
Of the ship. They call it steerage in the boat is the lower, because most people couldn't afford the upper deck because they were dirt poor. You're talking about people who are coming out of Europe in your grandfather's time with a goddamn suitcase. What's the name? The historian said, I can't think of his name.
Chomsky?
No, it'll come to me. He said when he did his lectures up there with all white people, when he said he traveled around the world and saw what the United States did, and he said he's not an American, he's not going to be part of the murdering and killing in the last 30 or 40 years. Not sure, but it'll come to me. It'll come. He said, not Chris Hedges. Was it Chris Hedges?
Michael Parente?
No, it'll come to me. He said, you must remember, white Americans, that's your politician, and the one you love, and the one you think is going to give you reparation. Ask the 28 million people. This government said, the world said, United States killed in the last 15 years. You think they give a damn about you? And they got no problem starving 28 million, half of children? And I said, I
said, 15, how long?
The last 20 years, 20 or 25 years, the universities, they say, have documented that at least 28 million people have died from U.S. sanctions in the past 10, 15 years.
They stopped the food. That's why the first thing they say is sanctions. And next thing you know,
they cut the food, so you starved to death.
Right. And they got the gun. You ain't got the gun.
If you know what they were doing to the indigenous people, and you know what they were doing to us, and you know that there ain't no way, it's like somebody saying, Chris Hedges, I think it was Chris Hedges, I'm not sure, I think maybe Chris Hedges. He says, you must remember, Europeans, he said, white Americans, because all these white people think they're American. They know America, they're damn immigrants. Nobody want to talk about where they came from. Trump don't talk about it. Peasants running from draft dodging. That's why his grandfather was here with a suitcase. Now he's a multi-billionaire. What kind of system is this guy who's $1 trillion? $1 trillion in paper. What happens to you if you have $1 trillion and you don't get oxygen for 20 or 25 minutes? What's going to happen to you?
Elon Musk.
We're going to die. So what is this nonsense about he's a trillionaire? Who's important in any society is the woman to make the babies. Yeah, you got to have the man to have the sex. Always a brother asked me, he told me one time, the rich people are so important to the society. I said, go back 2 generations, 3 generations before Rockefeller. Ain't nobody, they all here poor, ain't got nothing. They're rich off of the oil, everything that's here. They're rich off of what you built already. What are you talking about? So, Chris Hedges said in one of his writings, you must remember, he gave it a warning, that white Americans and European are ice-age hunters with a suit and a bed. He's telling you, just because you dress up. What kind of people are you? Just look at the history. He's a trillionaire. What did he do for it? Nothing. Where did he make his original money? So said in South Africa. Why didn't you make it in Europe? You'll find out why they were leaving. But the key thing I want to get through to you, Dr. Lewis, it's reading from what they say happened, not what I say.
Read the books.
Read. They don't want you to read. When you start putting it together.
That's why Mackie and Ben and them had books all over the house.
That's right.
In the bathroom, in the closet, and next to the bed. You couldn't walk around.
Yeah, you couldn't.
They have books everywhere.
Every place. So you now know they came over by boat, sailboat. The trip they say was 30 to 40 days. The steamboats 10 days. Steerage, they were in the lower level of the ship. Cramped, with space, poor ventilation, poor hygiene, poor food volume and scarcity, poor food quality. Of course, they tell this to all of the American people to say how superior white people were. Rats, lice, poor quality environment. What were they giving each other? Tuberculosis, typhus, cholera, smallpox, measles, influenza. And you know what they say, the mortality rate, the percentage of people, this is what they say, that didn't make it, 20% dead. And they said many of the ships, many of the ships that came in, they had to quarantine. Okay, we're going to read page 2 and we're finished. There's a lot of other stuff I wanted, but you can't do everything. This is second page. Port of entry. U.S. immigration. Name. They ask your country. You have any papers? Your sex, your age, your skill, criminal record, incarceration, record, educational record, whatever wealth you had, and do you have a job in the United States? Physical inspection, cursive. Contagious diseases likely to become public charge. That means they didn't want you to come and didn't have a job. They needed dirt cheap labor. They didn't know most of the people that have no jobs here.
It's like today, cheap labor. The Mexican boys climbing over the top of the building with
Okay, so this is basically what we have for the 2 pages. I have the remaining 4 or 5, and I just want to read 1 or 2 critical, another 5 minutes. The gist of it, okay, why did they come? Why did the white people who were running this country say we're working Africans to death. We don't want to share anything with Africans. We're raping them. We're putting them, you can't mistreat people as much as you mistreated us. Rape us, do everything. And then you ask them for reparation. Who are you asking? That 5% of the country, look, United States is not a democracy. A democracy is, according to these people's definition, is when the people, demos mean people, make the decisions on what you want to happen to your country and yourself. You don't make a damn decision about anything. So it's not a democracy. The United States is a republic. I'm using these fancy terms. A republic is when you have representatives who speak for you. Your congressmen, your senators, rest of them. The problem with it is, whoever made up that thing, they said this is the best government money can buy. So all your politicians, all of them, are brought and paid for. We've gone over they did a survey by the university. They say 90 to 95% of all laws passed, local, state, and federal, 90, 95% all benefit the big corporations and the rich families. And they say because the corporation, this is what the university said, give $5 billion to all your congressmen and senators. And they give back to them 6 or 7 trillion. How are you going to start your second term continuing a $4 trillion tax breaks? I still work. I've long got my Social Security, what you call it, whatever they're supposed to give you. They know how to cheat. I still work. And do you know I'm paying Social Security tax? I already paid Social Security tax, right?
Paying some more.
So how the hell you work and you pay more Social Security tax? So what I'm saying is, under feudalism in Europe, you're living under feudalism. Feudalism, when you had a king, and then you had the dukes and a handful of people who owned everything and made the rule. You have the same thing here. The president and Congress determine the domestic and foreign policy of the country. They have a constitution and everything is laid out very nice. They don't follow it. President's supposed to go to Congress and the whole thing before you get a declaration. So some people say, well, how come you can't get rid of this president and that president? If the president comes in and he gives a $4 trillion tax break to the richest Americans and the big corporations, and they're satisfied, and he does something that starts a war, they want to take the federal budget, your tax dollars, for the military for $1 trillion. They want to put on the new budget for military is 1.5 trillion. So they make these wars and they borrow the money and then hand you the taxpayer. So the United States is a, what do you call it when the king rules?
Dictator.
No, see, I forgot the term.
Reign.
Huh?
Rule, reign. Go. Monarch.
So okay, when you have a king that makes up all the rules and regulations and does what he wants, I forgot the technical term. That's what you got, because you got a president that's doing whatever he or she wants, and nobody's checking him.
Not a dictator.
And then the people who control the domestic and foreign policy of this country are the richest people. So that richest 5% or 10% who accumulate all the wealth, whatever the domestic policy is that we all have to live under, and the foreign policy, they make it for what benefits them. And when you have a president that makes up laws that we all have to live by, what they call it, the presidential, I forgot the term, the presidential order. You have to live by that.
Executive order.
Executive order, you have to live by that. Let me read while we finish so we'll understand a little bit here why the white people wanted to build a nation, but they didn't want to build it with, they want to build it with only white people. Different groups of white people that they control. They didn't want the indigenous, they killed them down. They were stuck with us, so they got the laws and everything, so you never, that's why the average white family has 10 times the income than the average person of color. And most of the immigrants, as he said with Sorrow, is flooding the country with all types of immigrants. I'm not saying it's good or bad. They want a conglomeration of all kinds of different people, none of them in any unified manner to put any kind of demand to those who are running the country. So you have to decide. What I'm trying to paint a picture is that the treatment we got when we were brought here as enslaved people, not when we were here for thousands of years living on this area, because the Olmec statues already tell you we were here. So the same reason they brought us, to work us, to rape us, for us to build and grow, they want you to still have that part. And as they let in more foreigners and more foreigners, they're looting different types of people. So there's no one group. Because we were giving them hell, rebellion and slavery. And then when we had the trouble with the hanging and African people demonstrating, you're causing the white people a headache. Like you used to do when you were officially slave. We needed to, but if we bring in some more millions of this kind of people, millions of this kind of people, put them in your community. And that's the plan, to keep you powerless, divided, to keep your numbers down. Divided. So when they desegregated the school, we don't need segregation. We need to not have it. Yeah, so you break up the black school and you keep the white school intact. We got to go to the so-called white school. They don't want us having stuff, and we lose all of that job. It's another way of destroying you. Your culture, your people. And then when you see the behavior of the Sahel nations, and now more and more nations, the French were able to, in the last 60 years, before most of the African countries under the French were given their independence in 1960. But they were able to enslave us because they had the gunpowder. And you see how we were mistreated the same way we were mistreated here in the worst times and still worse times, the same mistreatment there. So these European countries in the last 200 or 300 years that created themselves from the extermination of the indigenous people to the enslavement. So they did three things. They went and exterminated the indigenous people in that area, whatever they were. They brought another group of people in, primarily us, but they did it to the Chinese too, and the Asians. So the pattern that you want you to leave with is, they came, they took the land, mass murder, got another group of people to build up the nation because they didn't have the skill how to build and stuff. And you ask, yes, they didn't. Why did you build so many schools in the United States? For electrician, for carpentry, Then you didn't come from Europe with these skills. Okay. So the Industrial Revolution, this is the way they define it. Industrial Revolution, 1800 to 1900. Industrial labor demand. Factories, machinery, iron, steel, metal, steam power, oil, coal, rail links, mass production, urbanization, electricity, labor. These things were coming into play. And they wanted to build an industrialized society. You see how industrialized it is. You got electricity, all that. None of that was done in Europe. It was all done here. And that's why they needed that cheap labor to put these whites, so they pushed a large percentage of the whites who came here, kept them in these cities for the industrial base. Then they released a certain amount, put them on the land. And then after the Civil War, they began to take the southern half of the United States by the extermination of the indigenous people. So the white people who came out of Europe, to summarize, with the next time we'll go over specifically, not only did the whites bring them here for the industrial base to build it, they needed food. And as Ray alluded to the Homestead Act, they just gave the land to the people in the South. But the Homestead Act will end here, that Abraham Lincoln signed and Congress passed. If you are you white, they needed white. Martin Luther King made the allusion. In one of his talks, he said, you brought over your peasants, no skills. And you gave them land. You gave them equipment. You gave them training. Most of the educational system in New York City, I lived through it, was designed exactly for the Europeans. Because City College was the main area, the main university in the United States to educate Europeans up to the skills they needed to make this industrial country. But you were doing it already. You had already built the country. You already built the cities. So what I want to leave you with is a couple of things. I'm not telling you what to do. Don't let anybody play you. The Jews are bad here. The Irish are bad here. The Arabs are bad there. These are those people who you rename. There is no such thing as a Jew, a Christian, Muslim. Just like all of the other Pan-African conditions we talked about. It's a worship of God or not God. That is no, anybody can be a Jew, anybody can be anything they want. So that's, you classify the way you want. All them Jews are doing that. White people, in this instance, white people did it to the world for the last 200 or 300 years. That's something you could say. You could say the Chinese were bad, this was bad, but we know who did in, why the world is like this in the last 200 or 300 years. That's why it's like this. That's why you're on the bottom in the United States. That's why you're on the bottom every place where Europeans are, you're in the bottom. Somebody said, oh, the Chinese this and that. The center base for the survival of African people is the continent. Africa has to be strong and powerful. If our race is going to be able to be here physically, if you didn't have the continent of Africa, every place you scattered, presently, the European would destroy you. You wouldn't be here in 100 years. If they can mass murder by tens of millions, it demonstrated in Africa. It demonstrated in the United States. The Indian scholars, India now independent, and English scholars are arguing over how many people the English killed when they were there 200 years. The English said, we only killed 30 million of you. The Indians scholars there say you kill at least 150 million. They have a discussion of mass murder. You're having this discussion of mass murder every place they've been in the last 200 years. That's how I see it. That's how I act. And that's what I carry. So the survival of the race, the people you call Chinese, they can be scattered. But their survival is in what that landmass you call China. That's the mother. The mother for us is Africa, physically, not here. For Europeans, it's Europe. They just happen to be scattered all over. And birth rate, we can end. We always say it, people, they always minimize you. So I'm going to end with these 4 things so you remember how important Africa has always been and is. Right now, there's 4 things that the Europeans get from Africa that if they don't get, they wouldn't be here. And basically, the 8 things they get, and the 8 things the Chinese get. If you cut them all off, they don't have a country. Oil, gas, wood, and coal. Oil, gas, wood, and coal, they're all something you need to generate heat so you can warm your home and build things. That's where Europe, that's how United States built United States, and that's how United States built Europe after World War II, and that's how United States built Europe back after World War I and II. Where did all the natural cobalt and copper and tin, it came out of Africa? They stole it. So Europe would not have been rebuilt if it wasn't for the United States going into Africa and stealing the natural resources. The other 4 things is food. Africa has 65% of the world's arable land. We don't starve. We got 65% of everything grown on earth is grown in Africa. And it's been the Europeans and the Asians, everybody, and most of it has been eating out of Africa. The other 4 is food and fertilizer, minerals, and uranium. That's what the world runs on. So I always tell the brothers and the sisters when you talk, remind the world that there wouldn't be no world as it is today if you could not touch Africa. One of the elders, Brother Dix, had a good thing. She shut down the borders. Don't let any damn thing go out. The head of the European Union just announced that the carbohydrate, the what do you call it, the big tubes, help me. Sweet potatoes, the big, that coming out of Nigeria is critical for the health of Europeans to eat because they have lost access to the food in Ukraine. They admit who's feeding them. But remember, your enemy, white people and others, are not going to give you this information. Their job is to withhold the information, to suppress you. So I always remind people, where does Africa stand? As far as the European is concerned and stuff, it's a shithole country. That's what Trump tell you. He wouldn't know what a shithole was unless he was back there in Germany when they didn't have bathrooms. But that's the arrogance of the people here because they have a rich landmass you call North America. Because they've been stealing from everybody to stay rich. Because all the wealth coming in the country goes to a handful. It doesn't go to the masses of people. But they don't want you to know. So I leave you with this. They say 1.5, 1.4 billion human beings today live in Africa. Where's the largest group of Africans living outside of Africa? Is India. They call them the people of the beginning, the Adivasi. The black people of India look like all of us. Even the Indian government still admit.
And they
So
call
India-
us Dalits.
Dalits and all these other terms. Most of India look just like any one of us. You're seeing the lighter skinned one when the Aryans came in and mixed and took control. But to this day, the Indian government admits that at least 10% of the population is direct Adivasi. That's their term, the people of the beginning. So there's at least 200 million of human beings that look like every one of us who are directly African, number one. Now you got 200 million of you. Africans are where you living. You may not be controlling in India, that light-skinned one, like that Aryan is controlling. There's still 200 million of you. Then they say Brazil, 80, 90 million is number 2. And then the United States is supposed to be number 3. And when you count up to 200 million in India, and if you want to you look around the world, if you can see any one of your relatives who look like you, it's you.
But when they get here, if you tell them they black, they come down.
Go to Egypt. Go to the capital. You think you're in New York. But they can't tell you your strength. They can't say to you, African people are at least 60 or 70% of the population of the world now, when you consider wherever we are living. 1.4 billion that they say they count in Africa, another 200 million in India, another 50 or 100 million in the United States and stuff. You're about 300 or 400 million. The Europeans make up less than 4% of the world's population, and they're negative. So if you can come back 100 years from now, 50, 60, or 70, I'm coming back, I can't say about you, if you can come back, because you know when you so-called die, you're gone. You're not dead. So you can come back, we come back 30 or 40 years, they say before the turn of the century, at least 1/3 of the known world will live in Africa. So you're going to go back to being the vast majority, you're already the majority. So what comes out of Africa? Europe, even the United States, and China and Asia could not survive. You got the population, 1.5 billion. You're going to have by 2050, they say if things continue to go, you'll be 1/3 of the world's population. Just like China is industrializing, Africa is industrialized. 25 years, the industrial center was in Europe when they did all of the killing and taking the technology. Now, most of the industry globally is in Asia. In 20, 30 years, most of the manufacturing industry will be in the continent of Africa. It's going to go back to where it is. So that's for me, I feel that except there's a disaster. I'm not the minority. I'm just being mistreated because I'm in the wrong place at this particular time. The world wasn't like this, and it's going back. Questions, answers, whatever it is you want us to say or do so that we can talk. I just wanted to give you a feel of what this country was doing and still doing. Still grinding us down. Still trying to put more people in here.
Ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. Okay, we got a couple of questions. Brother Omar.
Yeah, this was amazing. This was very refreshing for my spirit. I have a question that has been bothering me the whole time. If you know capabilities, and I'm sure they're doing everything possible to choke us.
Yeah.
What can we do?
You gotta define who we is. The Africans who are definite,
Me.
wait now, the Africans who are us, straight up, at least 50% of the country. That dark-skinned African, when you look at him, doesn't run India. Give you an example. It's you, but that's India. Now, Africa, because you are 98% of the population, people look like all of us here, and you got third to almost half of the world's natural resources. You have the potential to do what you want. Now, when you ask me about you, or you ask me about me, the only thing I can tell you is right now, we're in a country that are run by Europeans. 95% of the Europeans don't run a goddamn thing in this country. A handful of white European, whatever they call them, they make the wars, they run all of them. Massive white people don't run anything.
The Rockefellers?
They just don't know it. That's the best way I can answer. I have no individual. Look, how are you going to build this country? Do most of the inventions. Obviously you did the invention because most of what you see around the country was done before the European population came. The mass white population only got skills. I'm born in 44. These educational schools were there in 44, 54, 64, 70. They were just yesterday these people were being educated. Most of the PhDs in the United States came from City College. They only put City College there for them in 1954. So what I'm trying to say to you, we're in recent. This is a recent colonial country. The United States is a brand new colonial settler genocidal country. There's no difference. You can't argue about Israel killing the Palestinians. They killed 200,000, they say, 250. Well, damn it, how many millions did they kill of us already? How they just said the Americans killed 25 million people in the last 10 years. Those are people of color. They're killing everybody. It's going to stop. So I can't tell you if you go to this school or that school. My brother, they know what they're doing. You ever heard of what they call this? What is Soros people? The World Economic Forum?
World Economic Forum.
You look up the Euro Economic Forum. What is it? It's a private, this is what they say, it's a private, what do they call it when you do organization?
Foundation?
Huh?
Foundation?
Yeah, let's use it. A private foundation is another word I'm looking for. Started by a German from Switzerland. This is a big world organization on TV because they run TV globally. Now it's changing. And it comprises, this is what they say, it comprises membership to males coming from countries that are leading. You know what they say? They tell you. Australia, these are the members. Australia, kill off the indigenous. New Zealand, kill off the Indian. Canada, kill off the Indian. US, they kill off the Indian. What you call England, they're Germans that came in and killed the Irish and stuff. Italy, all the European countries. If you want to be part of the World Economic Forum, unless you white, you're male, and it doesn't include 98% of the white human beings. They say we are the people in each of these countries that control the domestic and foreign policy of the country. So in other words, you list the country, England, France, Germany, you list all these, you put a quick list of countries, you ain't got nothing but white-run countries. Say 7 or 8 of them. Of those 7 or 8 white-run countries, United States, Canada, who runs these countries? United States, 350 million. You probably got about 2,000 white men who control all the corporations, who control all the military, all the CIA, FBI, all working towards one thing. For what's best for white people who are rich. Only 3% of the people in this country are super rich. Who runs the domestic and foreign policy of this country? White men. So that's what the World Economic Forum is, a private organization of white men coming from these white countries. They've been very specific. And each of these men who are in this club run those white countries. So that might be 40 powerful men that's in Britain, run all of it, make all the decisions who we're going to bomb. You have nothing to say about who you're going to bomb, who you're not going to bomb, how much your taxes are, you're not going to tax. You're in a... I don't mean to make everything negative because people say, oh, sometimes Dr. Lewis, you're negative. I'm not negative. I'm telling you the way the damn thing is. The United States has AI. The new thing is AI. AI takes a tremendous amount of electricity.
Water too.
Huh?
Water too.
Okay. China has been preparing. They got the waterfall. They have a windmill. They have solar. They have windmill solar. They have some of these other things. United States electric system is broken down. The nuclear plants in France has 57 nuclear plants. Half of them don't work because they have to be repaired. They haven't been repairing them. Same thing in the United States. The United States electric grid is old. They haven't been upgrading it. And they don't have electricity in Detroit. They're going to take away some city, small city near Detroit, take away the people's electricity to give it to the big corporations. Then I said, why? That big corporation has been getting billions and billions, and when they had the lockdown, this COVID fraud, they locked the country down for 4 years. 1919, 2021, 22, almost 4 years. They said that was the worst depression in the United States. They said in the 1929, according to them, 30% of the country was unemployed. In COVID, that 5 years, 50% unemployment. At any one time, 50% of the American working people were unemployed, and and a third of all small businesses went out. What kind of country are you running with 350 million people? And they say every 7 years, they have these depressions. But every time they have the depression, more and more masses of people, black as well as white, lose their jobs, lose their homes, go into poor living. So what's happening is you have 5% of the population with all the wealth and money making all the decisions. And the masses of your population of all types are becoming more impoverished, with black people being the worst impoverished.
Worse off.
Okay, so that's what you have. You have a World Economic Forum, a club of who? These are men and women who are the grandchildren of the ones who did everybody in. So I look at Trump as a third generation. How this man, the man don't know from what he's been taught. Theft. They all have theft. How the hell are you going to come here with nothing? Your grandfather come with nothing and you got a big estate and you got billions. It's a joke. But you can't talk about mass murder. You can't talk about the World Economic Club. They tell you who they are. And they fighting they fighting like hell to keep it that way. But they know Africans are coming, Asians are coming. All these people were here for thousands before your grandfather happened to get out of Europe with gunpowder. That's what happened. They know it ain't gonna last. The United States is fighting a war with Iran. The United States, they say, spends more than 10 times more than what 10 other countries spend, and they already ran out of missiles. Why? You build a missile for $6 million that don't work. Somebody else built a missile for 2,000 or 3,000 that works. These people who run the country, it's all theft. How do you think Trump and the rest of these, Bill Gates and the rest of them, they're third and fourth generation? They came from what? What did they learn from their parents? You murder. You mean to tell me they didn't know they're killing indigenous people? They don't know they're starving Africa? They know. What are they drawing on?
Bill Gates, he even crossed his own homeboy when he was on the computer.
These people do not care. They're coming from a feudal system.
If you tell a man that you're from
We battled the best way. We survived pretty good as long as we did here. I'm not trying to say to you it's hopeless. But I've been working in this country since I was 16 years of age. And boy, I'm just saying what happened. You have a group of people running this country, and they're following the game plan that their grandfathers had. And what was the game plan? Anybody who ain't white, screw them. And then you screw most of your whites. You get in your clique. So about the electricity. So this country doesn't have, these big corporations are not going to spend their money to build new electric plants. China has plenty, Russia has plenty, Africa has plenty. Now people are saying we need this for everybody. Here, they take it only for a handful. So they take the electricity out of a community rather than spend the money to build a nuclear plant. Why are we spending money? We're here to make money. This is capitalism. But look at what capitalism caused. How many tens of millions of people around the world had to lose their lives, their civilization, because they had to experience the last 200 years of Europeans. That's what it comes to boil down to. So I don't want to paint a picture that is bleak. That's the only way I have to paint it. Somebody else got to come and paint it another way. We all, don't get me wrong, you struggle and you work and you struggle and you work. There, Pete, you know where a lot of the big AI corporations are? Where could you go to get a vast amount of electricity? The Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and all those Arab countries. Why? They're small countries, 5 million, 2 million, 3 million. They have a vast amount of oil. And that oil, they can produce a vast amount of energy. So a lot of your startup countries are in the Middle East with getting that dirt cheap electricity. Now, but there's a problem. So all that extra money that those Arabs have been sending to the United States, instead of going for roads or schools or to help the masses of people, it all goes in a handful of few, and they mass it, and they live good. They don't know about running a country. Next time when you see, you know what they were running from? We'll get into it the next. They were running from diseases, mass diseases, a lot of it, and they were running from famine, diseases, and wars. That's what pushed them out by the tens of millions. Famines, we have the documentation in the next. Diseases, all the measles, mumps, chicken, all that was brought by Europe. The Africans didn't bring it, the indigenous didn't bring it, so infectious diseases were brought by Europe. The fact that they came with suitcases, they came with no skills. And the fact that they did what they did. You bring them in, bringing them in to do the industrial work, and you give them farms, because we want a white country. You kill off the indigenous people and you destroy the African community. Three things were going on simultaneously. Up to when I was born, he was born, and you born, and still going. White, we want white country, so we give them land, we give them education, everything. We don't want the Indians, we killing them off in 2 stages, first from the west, and then we go out west. And the Africans, we need them. The music, the history, the sports, the genius. You make America what a humanity. But you ain't gonna get the big, when that hundreds of billions of dollars come back, that oil money come back, it don't go into, it only goes to the big corporation in Wall Street. They don't teach the history, they don't teach anything because, so brother, I don't want to.
I don't want their money. Can we disrupt it? I'm talking about, they have their plan. Where is our plan? And I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about 30, 40, 50 years from now.
We have a plan. Now you have to decide where you have your plan. Africa has a plan. Right now, there are 15 countries in Africa. Almost 1/4 of the land mass and over 300 million people in different African countries are doing exactly what you're doing. They're growing their food, their cities are growing, and you have the opportunities. Not here, there. Now, this is what they say. Who's on the internet? The largest group of people, whoever did the survey, on the internet, Chinese. The second largest group of people who are on the internet is the Europeans. Bringing up the third rank and soon to overtake the Europeans are the Africans. People like me and you, but Africa, they're more Africans. They're 1.5 billion Africans. So what you're asking for, it's in Africa. If you're in the youth, that's why the youth is raising hell. The youth are going to get what you want. Because the continent is 4 times bigger, has massive resources, and if you can get good governments like the Sahel nation, there are 13 governments who are bringing up Africa the way you want it brought up. But it ain't happening here, and it's not going to happen here systemically. It can't. And I don't want to be pessimistic. This is the effing reality. Yes. I'm 82 years of age. I've been educated in this city. I've been into the South Pacific. I've been into Africa and the rest of them. This place is a dump. Compared to what the rest of the people are doing, China has 4 times the population. Put 10 million people to work, they're laying off people here. Why? Because the Chinese have a long culture, but they've been through 100 years. They say 100 years of disgrace or something. With the Europeans, everybody building. So the Chinese people say, look, we're ancient people. We need and want things, but we can't steal it from the Africans because the Africans are our connection. We can't steal it from the Europeans because the Europeans got too many guns. So the Chinese have decided that to get a place in the world where they can feed their kids and to be strong, you got to work your ass off. But the Chinese government runs that when the wealth comes in, half of the wealth they let the private sector manage, and half of the wealth the government manage, right? In this country, 98% of all the wealth goes to the rich. The president just gave them a $4 trillion budget, and they're taxing the hell out of us. They're laying us off massively, white as well as black. And you give it the richest corporation and the richest white people $4 trillion when they had COVID, when they would have half the country laid off. They printed up almost 12 trillion.
Yeah.
To the big corporation. Who's the only one can stay open? Liquor stores, food stores, and big corporations. The rest of us lost money. How many of us lost? Look, the reason that I think like this is because I was fortunate enough not to stay in the clinic. I spend much of my time, even though I have an MD and I have a specialty here and here, it was in the continent, seeing what's happening. It's in the South Pacific, it's in the Caribbean. Because I see the world different. I'm not saying that I don't want to do a pessimistic anything. I'm trying to transfer whatever now while I'm alive. So I understand your frustration. My kids' children, like any other children, they're brilliant as hell. All opportunities they didn't give them, they're the same. It's the same thing. We all doing it. So I'm not pessimistic. I'm giving you a certain picture. And I'm saying to you, and you check it out.
Okay.
The same way these people came and did three things, and that agenda is still here. Bring in the whites. We want to make this a white country. Exterminate the indigenous people. And get the most. These African people, they're smart and they're getting the most out of it. We built the country. Music, the history, the sports, most of the inventions. The inventions that they try to give white people, Africans and others have been doing, have that in place for hundreds and not thousands of years, and then they tell you they did it. Okay? So my brother, I'm not here to make things bad. I'm not here to make things good. I'm telling you, this is what I want to present to you so you can understand who you're dealing with. Because preparation.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. Sorry about the connection, bad connection today, but the lecture will be on tomorrow. I will upload it and put it tomorrow so you can see the whole thing. Our good friends from the Zoom that supported, but we just had a bad day today. But I'll put everything on tomorrow and everybody can see it. The whole thing, excellent lecture. Give them a great big hand. Things is on the move. Thank you very much, Zoom. You can conversate and talk while we set everything up. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day. Remember the members that was lost during the CO. And never forget them, and nobody's talking about it. So try your best. So give Doc a great big hand. And you can conversate and talk while we clean up and set up the meeting.
Hey, Brother Ray, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.